This is Inside Mside, your favorite podcast for all things Morningside. Here's stories from students, alumni, faculty, and more about what makes the Morningside experience so special. Welcome back to Inside Mside. I'm your host, Alex Waters, the Alumni Engagement Director. Excited to be here today. Especially one of my favorite things about this pod is not only getting to interview, whether it's board members, alumni, students, everyone, but really getting to know the faculty and some of the work that they're doing and work that they're doing with students in particular. And so today is no exception. I'm really excited to welcome Dr. Elizabeth Coody. Dr. Coody, welcome to the pod.
Well, thank you so much for having me on the pod, Alex Waters. It is a real pleasure.
No doubt. I'm very excited to have you on this edition of Inside Mside to talk just a little bit about how we've gotten to know each other and get to work together a little bit over the short time that you've really been at Morningside.
Yeah.
But then also some of the work that you're doing and some of the exciting things that are coming up as well.
Oh, always excited to talk about the work. It's
there
good.
You go.
It's good work.
Most definitely. Well, why don't we start off by just introducing yourself a little bit, let the listeners know, any prospective students, anyone know what they should know about you.
Sure. So my name is Elizabeth Coody, and I am the Assistant Professor of Religious Studies here at Morningside. You will see me around if you're at Morningside doing all manner of different things that I'm sure we'll get into
Wearing
here.
many hats, for
That's
sure.
right. I'm a hat lover of lots of different roles, so it's really fun. Yeah. Absolutely.
Great. And then tell me just a little bit of background. I was intrigued myself, and I was trying to recall where you were from and kind of that background. So talk to me about what brought you to Morningside?
Sure. So I am originally from Shreveport, Louisiana. It is in northwest Louisiana. It is a town on a river, much like our lovely Sioux City.
Yeah.
It is a tri-state city as well.
Look at that.
And so, yeah, it feels very much like home in a lot of ways. How I got to Morningside is So first, I went to a small liberal arts college in Shreveport, Louisiana called Centenary College of Louisiana, which would absolutely feel very comfortable next to Morningside. In fact, they're maroon as well as there are colors. Yeah,
Seeing a lot of parallels
That's
here.
right. They don't have a football team, though, so we'd really get along.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
I went to Centenary College of Louisiana. I majored in English. Had a fabulous time, worked for a year and decided to go to graduate school in religious studies. I was working with religious studies a little bit as I was at Centenary. I had a really wonderful undergraduate advisor named Dr. Susan Brayford. And it led me to Denver, Colorado, where I went to the Iliff School of Theology. They had a reputation for social justice and like good causes and working well with people. And I was like, that's the kind of religion I want to know about. Like, that's what I want to understand. I also went in with a deep interest in the Bible. From my English major, I had thought a lot about literature and texts and reading. And as I was doing it, I kept running into the Bible, right? In English, you run into the Bible in all kinds of different ways. And I just was never really satisfied with how we studied it. So I thought, you know what? Get a master's degree. That's what will satisfy you, just about anything. So I went to Iliff, met some really fantastic people there, got my master's, then went on to do my PhD in religious and theological studies. Loved every second of it. While there, I ended up noticing the need for a writing center there. And so I founded one. They needed one, so I made one up and just worked with students there for a while. As part of that, in your PhD, you do your dissertation work. So your book that you write at the end of your PhD, right? And I did a lot of work in popular culture with that. I ended up looking at how the Bible is interpreted in comics, and particularly Jesus and his crucifixion and how that sort of gets interpreted in comic books. Yeah. And I got really excited about it, and it ended up needing on my committee this wonderful person by the name of Jeffrey Mahan. So Dr. Jeffrey Mahan he just retired from Iliff School of Theology, and he did a lot of work with popular culture. He's actually still doing it in retirement, really joyfully, he is writing partners with none other than Bruce Forbes, they had been writing partners for many years and worked on religion and popular culture in America, which is the sort of landmark volume that they worked on with the University of California Press. So long story short, I guess, Jeffrey Mahan introduced me to Bruce Forbes at an American Academy of Religion conference. And at that conference, Jeffrey happened to mention that, hey, this really exciting person that I really, he was very complimentary of how great I am and talked about my work and how exciting it was to Bruce Forbes. And Bruce Forbes happened to mention, hey, I'm about to retire. And I have a job that I think might be interesting to you. So
we might be looking for a candidate with that skill set.
With exactly what Jeffrey has just described to me. So I was thrilled at the chance and applied, met everybody, was excited to come. So I have now been here for 4 years. So,
I was going to say, how long ago was this conference? Was there a period in between where you were just anticipating and excited?
It was literally, so our conferences are in November, just before Thanksgiving, and he was going to announce his retirement really that spring. So it was beautiful, perfect timing, right? It's that fantastic, God stuff, I guess. Yeah. But just the idea of teaching at a college of Morningside's size and interest was exactly what I was looking for. Like, absolutely, if you had asked me to describe my dream job at 20 years old, this is exactly what I would have described, right?
See, and that's interesting you answer it that way, because I was going to ask you, if this was a passion that it was ingrained into you in high school, you knew you wanted to do it, or it sounds like pretty early on in your college career when you were studying English, you knew?
Yeah, well, so when I was a kid, a very small kid, I would explain things to my parents on a whiteboard, and they were like, I think she's going to teach, just saying. When I grew up, I didn't really know what a PhD was. I mean, we didn't know anybody with a PhD, right? And I was sort of, we knew a couple people, maybe I'd heard of it, but it really wasn't until I got to college and saw what people there did that I was immediately sold. This is what I want to do. Yeah. This thing that they are up to is absolutely the thing I want to do. It's working with students at exactly this stage of life. Whether we're talking traditional age or not, people who go to college are looking for something, right? That's why you go. You're looking for ideas. You're looking to think new thoughts and be a part of something in some kind of way. And that stage in someone's life is just a thrill to me, right? Yeah. Finding that it's a delicate, vulnerable stage in a lot of ways, but it's also so exciting because there's so much potential for growth. It's just that moment of realization that there's more in the world, that there's something else out there, that there's jobs you haven't even heard of before that are suddenly really everything that you've ever wanted, right? And that's what I wanted, and that's what I get to do here. It's really fun.
It's such a beautiful idea, right, of being able to come to college and be exposed to some of those different ideas or ideals, or even just paths you might take, things you might pursue. Exactly. I truly love that. And now you said you've been on campus for what, 4 years?
Yeah, this is the end of my 4th year. I think I'm doing the math right. Religious studies is not math, but I think that's right.
Yeah, right? Most definitely. Well, and what I was thinking about was just your experience. Okay, so you're in college, you learn about this opportunity, you think that's exactly what I want to do. That's what you go on to pursue because you want to pay it forward. You want to make that impact in students' lives and maybe introduce them to something that they had never heard of before, never thought of before. And what is so beautiful about that is I was thinking about how you and I have gotten to know each other more, and it's through the XPath program.
Yeah.
Right? And just how much that parallels or how much that coincides with kind of your experience and what your passion was. It makes perfect sense that you wanted to be a part of the XPath.
That's right.
And so talk to me just a little bit about, for those, we haven't really explained that in great depth on the pod before. So the listeners of Inside Mside, this is a little bit about the XPath.
So I'll give it a shot. So
take it away.
The XPath is a path for people who come into Morningside as an undecided major, right? So you're undecided as a major. And instead of just saying, well, you don't know which major you're picking yet, good luck, we put you on a path where you get with a cohort of a lot of other people who are similarly deciding which major they would like to pursue. Yeah. And we intentionally explore different paths that you might take. What I love about this and why I maybe not so secretly think that everybody should start as an XPath student.
You're not wrong.
Is because you don't really know what you don't know, especially your very first semester in college. Mm-hmm. If you are, especially if you're a traditional student, you're 18 years old, you're walking in for the first time, guys, trust me on this one, you have not even heard of all the possible jobs that might be a perfect fit for you. And just picking a major because, I don't know, it has words that you understand in it might not be the best way to do that. People spend a lot more time, picking out lip gloss than they do majors sometimes. And I just think that's not maybe the way to go, right? Take some time, explore yourself, think about who you are, think about where your actual passions are and where that need in the world is for somebody like you. I mean, that's really what we're doing in the XPath, is trying to show people what's possible and also show them themselves in a different way. You are the trainer for us on Strengths Quest, right? Doing these strengths exercises to help people understand where they are strong, where they already have skills. And then we take those so I teach the Critical Inquiry and Communication, or CIC, one of the many sections of CIC. And what I do in that class is, along with my colleagues who also teach XPath, David Elder and Brandon Besh, we take you through different exercises and activities and sort of stretch out, what is it that you actually can do? What is it, the thing that feels easy to you? Students will often, especially when we're talking about what class to take next, they'll say something about, well, that sounds really easy. And I'm like, well, hold on now. It's a college level class, so it doesn't matter what topic we're talking about. There's no quote unquote easy classes, right? If it feels like it's a topic that would be easy for you, though, let's listen to that. Because I can tell you, one of the hardest classes I took in college was jazz dance. I'm terrible at jazz dance, but people will all the time tell me, oh, dance, that sounds easy. Well, okay, maybe for you, but this is not for everyone. Yeah. So just trying to figure out those things that actually feel like something that is already something that you're interested in, or stretching yourself to find stuff that you maybe haven't even heard of yet, that you're sort of, we tell you about what it is and suddenly you have to take a class in that, those are exciting conversations to have. So that's what we do in XPath is you're taking a CIC class with me, which is every college has a class like this, right? That is the
introductory
course.
The
introductory. It's here's how to college, just to make sure everybody's on the same page as far as the tools you're going to need, the skills you're going to need to have. But embedded in that, we have this really intentional look at what it is that you can do with yourself.
Yeah,
right?
It's who you are and what you're capable of, or what you might be able to pursue. And I love what you said about just introducing you to careers that you might not have ever even heard of, because I often try to emphasize that to students, especially prospective students, talking to them about that. Look, you might know what your parents do, you might know what your friends' parents do, or you might have seen something on TV. But until you really have a conversation or you learn about different companies or organizations or what's out there, you truly don't know what could be your calling or what could be your passion. And so really thinking about the XPath is just giving these students time, place, and space to really learn more about themselves and what they could go on to do. I think it's such a great program. And I know I've really enjoyed being a part of it, and I think you have too.
Absolutely.
It seems right up your alley when you're talking about your experience during college and what you wanted to be a part of.
Well, it's so much fun because students come in, and a lot of times the XPath students kind of divide out into two or three basic categories, right? Yeah. There's the student who is just I know I want to go to college, but I really have no idea what's there.
Exactly.
Right?
Or what I want to study.
Or what I want to study. Like maybe I play a sport and I'm excited about that, or I'm excited about, going to parties, or I'm excited about something, but I really don't know what this all means. And then there's a student who is just interested in everything and cannot pick a major, right?
Admittedly, that was me.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Yeah. Somebody who's just like, well, I like 5 things and maybe that's too many majors. I am, by the way, a tremendous fan of the double major, but the idea of, trying to kind of narrow down your passions into some boxes that fit the major, right, is often really difficult for people. And XPath is a good way to do that. Or figure out, hey, I need to do a student design major and figure out something brand new that nobody's ever thought of.
Carve my own path.
That's right. So just trying to fit those 2 students, or that kind of middle student who's both like really pumped about some things, but also just not sure what that looks like as a major, right? I love math, but what does that have to do? Like, what am I going to do with this degree?
Well,
right?
And so often they think that, especially math is a great example where it's like, oh, I just become a math teacher, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
all I can do.
There are some great math teachers out there, but there's also just about everything else under the sun that you can do with math, right?
Yeah.
And just kind of having that imagination about what's possible is one of the ways that we can help, right?
Yeah, perfect example. Oh, I want to study religious studies because what? I just want to become a pastor. That's right. The only thing I can do, right?
Wah. No way.
Wah. So I understand that you are totally passionate for the XPath, as am I. Mm-hmm. I think that it's a great opportunity for students. But why don't you also talk to us a little bit about what's happening in your department? Because you do exciting things in religious studies.
Humanities is the place to be, right?
Yeah.
Humanities department is amazing. So my program is religious studies. Religious studies is a major and a minor. So I have majors and minors. I have a ton of minors who pick it up along the way because they realize, hey, I'm interested in these classes. And I've actually had a few people recently who just sort of got interested, took some classes, and I said, hey, you have a minor, right? Maybe we should declare that, right? So the idea of doing a religious studies major or minor is really a way to dive deeply into a topic. Religious studies is different than a lot of other kind of majors and disciplines in that we're talking about a topic rather than a method. Right? So if you study psychology or sociology, there's particular methods in those fields that you use, but you're studying all kinds of different topics. Religious studies, guess what we study? It's religion.
There you go.
But we use all kinds of different methods to study religion and figure out what it is. And how people engage with it. What is it that people are doing when they do religion? We take very seriously people's perspectives on religion. We take seriously all kinds of things that people say about what they're feeling and doing and engaging with when they do religion. And then think about it in terms of society as a whole. How do societies function with religion?
Yeah.
What does religion do in particular societies, both historically and in our own world today? How does all this work together, right?
It's so interwoven.
And it's all interwoven. And it's one of those things where every time I teach a class that is, I call them my religion ands, right? So religion and something else. Part of the task of the class is to sort of help people understand where religion is in this topic, right? So I just got finished teaching religion and popular culture, one of my faves. Religion and popular culture. Religion is everywhere in popular culture. It's in music, it's in movies, it's in comics, it's in just every aspect of popular culture. And helping people to figure out how to find that and then interpret it once they've found it, right, is just a really interesting project and something that I think can help you be a better person, but also a better professional, right? If you understand the values and beliefs and morals and sort of moral authorities that people bring to different topics, then you suddenly can have an insight into why people do what they do, right? Sometimes the things that feel really inexplicable until you understand someone's religious tradition suddenly the light comes on when you realize, well, you are actually acting in a pretty consistent way or a really inconsistent way, but around a particular religious tradition.
Yeah.
All those kinds of insights, like that's what I'm interested in helping people figure out. Like, what is it that people do in religion, and also help people understand their own sort of personal religious traditions.
Yeah.
Like,
or even their journey, right?
Exactly.
Of finding themselves.
Exactly. So whether students have a religious tradition or not, like I always encourage people to look deeply into those journeys and the path that they've taken, right? In other words, who are you? What are you doing here? Like, to think a little bit about yourself and sort of your position in the world.
And think about it critically, too. I think sometimes people get the bad rap, right? You come to college and question everything. And it's like, or it can fortify your beliefs, and you can be more steadfast. And
that's right.
This is exactly why I believe this, or I love this aspect of my religion, and this and some of those different things that they want to learn about themselves.
I love when people get a better clue about their own worldview. In other words, I'm not really interested in getting people to think my way or think one particular way. I'm really interested in helping people understand their own worldview well. I want you to be the best you can be.
Yeah.
And sort of understanding that in all of its, glory and guts is absolutely where I'm going, right?
Yeah.
Trying to understand the parts of yourself that you need to examine.
Well, and think about it too, the way that you were saying, I mean, gosh, I have like 1 foot in career services and 1 foot in alumni engagement. And so I'm always thinking about, on the career services side, diversifying your skill set, right? And learning not only more about yourself, but maybe your colleagues, maybe your coworkers, all of these different things to help really make you a better qualified candidate when you're going to apply for these jobs.
That's right. If you can't understand your colleagues or your customers in terms of religion, right? If that's like something that you can't touch, right? People get scared of religion, right? You're not supposed to talk about religion or politics,
right?
Exactly.
It's one of those forbidden topics.
That's right. But, if you're too scared of it, right? If it becomes that sort of boogeyman that you can't touch, then I think that really it harms you, right? It makes it so that you can't engage in parts of people's lives.
And if you come at it from a more educated stance or, more informed stance, I think that sometimes helps.
That's right. You want good, interfaith dialogue. You want to be able to speak well of yourself, but also to people who are different from you.
Exactly.
Because, you're going to meet them. They're going to be different.
Definitely. We're a very diverse place.
Absolutely.
Now, one of the other exciting things that you've been a part of is this experience grant that was recently awarded. Yeah. And so Morningside's been in the news a couple times now for getting some great grants, but why don't you talk to me and talk to the listeners a little bit about the Morningside Experience Grant?
So the Experience Grant was just this really cool idea that folks in the administration had to distribute some funds around ideas that faculty have around experiences, helping students to have an experience, right? So what I used my Experience Grant to do was think about how I could help students understand that this particular class I was teaching was not an ordinary class. So I taught a class this spring called Religion and Controversy. Back
to that pop culture.
That's right. Back to all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So this controversy class was really, I was looking at the intersection between religion and science. So where are points of conflict between religion and science? Should it conflict? Does it conflict? When does it do it? How? What are the parameters? And the way I wanted to do this is with this couple of games called Reacting to the Past games. So Reacting to the Past is this consortium. It's a group of faculty and professionals from all over higher education and education who construct these games based in historical events. Where students take on a role from history and become that character and play through the sort of logic of that character in order to reenact or react to a controversy from the past. Now, the trick is it's not like putting on a play in that we're not reenacting in the sense that it's all going to turn out the way it did the first time.
Okay.
We're reacting, which means that you use your own logic and mind and writing skills and public speaking skills to be the character in as faithfully as you can, but then also re-argue the point, right? So things don't necessarily have to turn out the way they did the first time. Our first one that we did was the trial of Galileo.
I was going to say, you got to give me some examples.
Yeah, so we did the trial of Galileo. We had students take on roles from all these different cardinals and folks from all over who were involved in trying Galileo Galilei for his crimes of basically the way he talked about the construction of the universe, right?
Yeah.
Which is a lot more like the way that we think the universe is actually constructed now. But at the time, the church was absolutely against it, right?
Yep.
They had this very Aristotelian idea, or sort of the idea is that the earth doesn't move, like we're all sitting here on the earth, and there's these domes above us. That was the established idea.
Gotcha.
Galileo was really against it. So basically, we had students in there taking the part of both sides of this argument. Right? What was really complicated, of course, is like arguing for science that you know is wrong. I really enjoyed having a bunch of STEM students in there who would like argue for the wrong science, right? But do it well, like do it using the math that was used at the time. Which was a pleasure, right?
Uh-huh.
We also made really sure that at the end of the game, we had my colleague Dave Slavin in to talk about physics and make sure that we, knew
actually
what was really
understood.
going on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I did not want a student marching out thinking, well, the Earth really doesn't move.
Uh-huh.
So that was just a hoot, right? So part of what we did for the grant is I basically equipped us to do these kinds of things. So make sure that we were in character. So I used the grant to do things like we had a party at Prince Chese's house. So we had a catered party. We had costumes. So we had like berets and other things to like really get into character.
Yeah.
And then we also had telescopes that were just modeled on Galileo's telescope, so people could actually experience what it was like to look through a telescope at the moon.
It's like truly an immersion.
Like Galileo did.
Yeah.
So just those kinds of pieces of equipment was basically what I used the grant to buy.
You set the stage.
That's right. It was setting the stage because I wanted people to get that really I'm interested in us playing this game, right? I am not going to, it's not going to feel like a quote unquote regular class, right?
Yeah.
You are going to play with each other.
And so are you doing one of these situations per semester? Is that accurate?
No, so we did the trial of Galileo. Then we re-adjudicated Kansas 1999, where the Kansas Board of Education was considering macroevolution in the school curriculum. And then for the last part of the class, students wrote their own game. We created what's called in the Reacting to the Past literature a mini game. So they created it over the last couple of weeks of class, and then we played it during finals. So, and it worked. It worked. It actually worked. I was like, it's one of those things where when you do something for the very first time, because this
fingers crossed.
Look, this is a really complicated project, right? Like this is a complicated thing to do. Faculty take years to write games like this, and I was basically giving students 2.5 weeks to do it.
Wow.
Right? So I set the bar high and said, do it. You've got it. Yeah. And they did. They totally did it and made a, pretty angsty game, which was just exactly what I sort of had no idea what they were going to make, right? But it was very dramatic. And then when we played it, it actually kind of went into all kinds of different like areas, just like a good Reacting to the Past game should, right?
Yeah.
So it was about sort of end of life issues. So thinking about, how do you deal with people in like end of life care, basically. And it was a very dramatic family that they wrote as characters. So yeah, it was perfect. Yeah.
Well, and what I love about this is talk about experiential learning. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like sometimes with experiential learning, I know at least me, again, taking my foot in the career services side of things, you often think that it's really just about vocational, almost, how can we really learn by doing about what we want to do for a career? Mm-hmm. And what's beautiful about what you're doing is you're saying, well, no, let's actually turn it on its head and just focus more on the academic side of it.
That's right.
And learn by doing through that.
And part of what was so great about this is you are both taking on a character that's very much not you. In fact, the last thing I had them write was sort of, well, how are these characters like you or very much not like you, right? Yeah. I don't expect everyone to be a Renaissance cardinal, right?
Sure.
So how, but where did you find points of contact and where didn't you? But then the tools that we actually used in playing the game were some of the most down and dirty, practical, actual things that people will use in any kind of early employment situation that they get into. So it was things like writing persuasively. We wrote several persuasive letters to make sure that people could argue their points, They also did persuasive speeches. Like every piece of speech and debate that you do is, they had to practice being a good sort of public speaker, arguing a point, right?
Yeah.
Like having something that people in the room are definitely going to disagree with you about, but you still have to hold your own and make good, solid points.
Great.
And then things like we used Slack to be like a communication tool so that they could really get used to that kind of outside of class communication, work communication. We used it just like I've used it in my own sort of professional environments. And especially building that mini game was quite the ordeal, right? Because they had to hash out, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? I gave them the parameters and the tools and the instructions. And then I said, now do it. Yeah. And I said, as I was watching them do this, I thought, this is the most accurate to what working in the first couple of years feels like that I have ever done, right? Because you're trained on the job, like in almost any field that you get into, like there's going to be a certain amount of, you can't know this until you walk in the door kinds of, work environment kinds of stuff. Yeah. And you're going to have to work with people, in teams, in groups, in pairs. You're going to have to get to know people and actually...
whether you want to or not.
That's right. And actually hash out problems with them and figure out how it is we're going to approach this and get to the deliverable, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the business speak about it, right?
Oh,
so the
cool.
idea that like that's what they were doing, ultimately, you played a Renaissance cardinal and you played someone from 90s Kansas, but you also were interrogating how you approach those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was so useful. Like I knew it was going to be good. I planned it because I thought it was going to be good.
Yeah.
But gosh, it really went past my wildest dreams.
I was going to say it makes sense why you received the grant. So hopefully I look forward to watching more iterations of that.
Oh, absolutely. I can't wait to do it again. Yeah.
Yeah. The last thing, again, if you're just tuning in, Inside Mside with Dr. Elizabeth Coody, talking about religious studies, but all the things that you're doing, which are really incredible. The last thing, though, that I wanted to touch on is something that I've really appreciated. I've gotten to take part of in the past and even hear about some of the guests you had, and that's for Writing Day. Why don't you talk a little bit, whether they're alumni or students or prospective students, anyone that's listening, talk a little bit about what Writing Day is and maybe how your passion for writing and some of your own writing. I know you're working on stuff this summer, but how does that translate into what you're doing with students here in Writing Day?
Sure. So Writing Day was established by Marty Knepper some 30-something years ago here at Morningside. It's a long-standing tradition where we have programming related to writing. The original sort of purpose of it was to encourage writing across the curriculum. These days, we write across the curriculum. That is not it's an established part of what we do. So what we've done with Writing Day is try to transition into having it be more of a showcase for alumni, for folks in the area who write and do all kinds of different kinds of writing. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm really interested in, is showing people that writing isn't just, it includes things like novels and poems, but it's more than that there's actually an aspect of writing that can improve almost any kind of professional environment. Writing a really amazing email is quite the skill, right?
Right. Or maybe a memo or anything to your boss or
right.
a brief. Yeah.
Yeah. Having something that, that actually taking seriously writing as an art, as a science, is something that can benefit you, right? Yeah. And that those types of writing don't have to be just one thing. So a lot of what we've been doing in the last year is sort of showcasing what kinds of writing there are in our area and in with our students and alumni. And then that's the plan for next year too, is to sort of dig into, well, what is it that people write? How is it that they do it, and what's exciting about it?
Yeah. So now if I do have any alumni that are listening, anyone that wants to be involved really in Writing Day, how would they reach out, or how would they hear about what's going on?
Sure. So you could contact me, or you could contact Leslie Worden. So both of us are working on it. In fact, she's taken a bigger role in it next year too. So I think one of the things I want to encourage people to do is think about, what kind of writing would you like to show students, right? What kind of writing do you think they could model themselves on, or learn something about themselves, or what they would like to do, maybe from your process or the products, or, you've struggled through something and figured it all out now, and now you want to share it with them. So
perfect. Well, make sure to reach out to either of those professors. Go to the website, and especially too if you want to learn more about the XPath or anything else that we talked about today. We covered a lot, and I truly appreciate your willingness. I talked just briefly to send us off with, what are you working on this summer?
Okay, so 2 things this summer. One, speaking of Writing Day, I'm working on my own writing projects around religion and popular culture. I'm editing a volume. It's a second edition of the Understanding Religion and Popular Culture volume for undergraduates. And also, I am just on Monday going to start teaching a May term here on campus.
Oh, yeah,
it's called Creating Comics That Matter. I'm really excited about it. I'm going to have students working on their own comics. We're going to do all kinds of exploration with different kinds of textures of art and different kinds of work that they can do to express themselves. And then we're going to make our own comics. So I'm sure we'll have some stuff on Instagram. So
we'll have to
follow up. Yeah,
most definitely.
Follow that Inside Mayterm Instagram hashtag.
And we'll make sure to try to repost it as well. So we'll try to spread it far and wide. That's exciting stuff. Well, Dr. Coody, I really appreciate you taking time. Thank you so much for joining us on Inside Mside. It was truly a pleasure.
It's a real pleasure to me too, Alex. Thank you very much.
Of course.